finishing a book of the Torah. We're finishing the book of Numbers today. That's a big deal. And whoa, and then, but there's more. The main event in the Jewish calendar right now is that we are in a period of time that we sometimes call the 3 weeks. But the traditional term for it is Bein HaMetzarim, between the narrow places. We're stuck in between. Bein HaMetzarim, that phrase is taken from a line in the book of Lamentations, which we're reading at the end of these 3 weeks, because we are in the period of mourning for the loss of the great temple in Jerusalem, the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, which happened over 2,000 years ago. But we're still mourning this. So that's the period we're in, Bein HaMetzarim, the 3 weeks that lead up to the 9th of Av. The 9th of Av, that's Tisha B'Av, and that's the culmination of this mourning period. And so this Rosh Chodesh is Rosh Chodesh Av, the new month of Av. And actually, we have like a phrase, a saying about the month of Av. Misha Nichnas Av, someone who enters into the month of Av, Mim'atin B'Simcha, diminishes in joy. And that actually, we get that phrase from this text that we're going to look at. That's the phrase we're going to focus on today. Someone who enters into the month of Av reduces in joy. Actually, the Talmud goes on to say, right, just like in the month of Adar, the Purim month, Misha Nichnas Adar, Marbim B'Simcha, increases in joy. Someone who goes into the Purim month increases in joy, but someone who goes into this month diminishes in joy because we're in this period of mourning. So this very phrase that when we enter a certain month, we change our inner state, that suggests a particular relationship that we have to time. That is, this moment into this month, this day is meaningful. It's significant, and it has a certain potency, a certain energy. And it will again next year. There's something then that's cyclical about time. Right? This is why rabbinic tradition it always sees significance in the calendar. Right? Oh, if this parsha falls out on this week, we should talk about this parsha because it has meaning for us in this moment right now. Right? So the rabbinic move here is to somehow talk about the end of the book of Numbers and Shabbat and Rosh Chodesh and the 3 weeks and Tisha B'Av, right? But that's sometimes feels like a rabbinic trick. Like, I can talk about everything, but it's based on this idea that these intersections, these patterns in time, they're significant. They are imbued with meaning. So that is true, and that suggests, as I said, that time has a kind of cyclical quality. Like, it repeats, and we go through the same thing again and again every year. But is that the Jewish conception of time? Is our concept of time cyclical? It isn't, right? It's linear, isn't it? I mean, we're headed somewhere. What is the Jewish story if not a kind of hope for an end goal, for a destination, for redemption, a telos that stands at the end of history, right? So it's a linear conception of time. So which is it? Is it linear or cyclical? Okay, so that's the question that we have in our minds when we enter into this text. This is one of the most important statements on the topic of time, of how we relate to time and how we relate to this calendar that we cycle through every year. So let's take a look here. This is from the Mishnah. That's the first rabbinic code that's compiled at the beginning of the 3rd century of the Common Era. And this Mishnah frames for us this period of Bein HaMetzarim, between the narrow places, because between the narrow places is actually a reference in that code to the 2 days which bracket the 3 weeks. The days are the 17th of Tammuz and the 9th of Av. Tammuz is the month we just left, and Av is the month we're entering into. So let's take a look here at this piece of text, and I want to, as best I can with 100 people, to study it with you. Okay, so Chamisha Dvarim Iru et Avotenu b'Shivasar b'Tammuz v'Chamisha b'Tisha B'Av. 5 tragedies befell our ancestors on the 17th of the month of Tammuz, and 5 on the 9th of the month of Av. Okay, 5 tragedies that happened on that date, the 17th of Tammuz, and 5 that happened on that date. On the 17th of Tammuz, the 2 tablets of the 10 Commandments were shattered. That's the story from the Torah. Moses breaks the 10 Commandments. That happened, say the rabbis, on the 17th of Tammuz. The daily offering at the temple was finally discontinued. They finally, many years later now, centuries later, the temple stopped work and they stopped offering offerings at the temple. The city walls were breached. Now we're in the Jerusalem story, the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple. And Apostamos burned a Torah scroll and placed an idol in the temple. That also happened on the 17th of Tammuz, say the rabbis. Not the same 17th, obviously, right? This is many years later, then years later, sometime, okay. And on the 9th of Av, also 5 things. It was decreed that our ancestors would not enter the promised land. Again, that's a story from the Torah, that we weren't happy about what we saw in Israel, and so it was decreed, forget it, then you're going to wander in the desert for 40 years. The temple was destroyed for the first time and the second time. And this is the most important, maybe, repetition, because the temple was destroyed twice, and the rabbis tell us that sort of miraculously or coincidentally happened again on the same date, right? Lahavdil, but like if something, God forbid, happened on 9/11, like it happened again on that date, God forbid. And the fortress of Beitar was entrapped, and the city of Jerusalem finally was plowed down. So, Mishanichnas Av, and that's why we get this way. So when we enter the month of Av, we diminish in joy because of all that. So now I want to ask you, so these things keep happening. That's the idea. There are these days, these bad days, these like Friday the 13th kind of days where these things keep happening. And we're in that period. We're in this sort of, this sketchy period where anything could happen. But why? Well, what is it? What are the rabbis saying? What does that mean? And I'm not asking you to buy into this. I'm just saying, what are they trying to tell us about the way time works? Why would things keep happening on the same 2 days? What is that saying? Anyone have a theory here, a theory of time? Anyone want to offer an interpretation? Why would that be? Okay, this does suggest a cyclical relationship to time. Thanks, Hannah. That's right. We come again to the 17th of Av, and but what does that mean? What does it mean that there's we're going through time and there's what? Yeah, Shira.
So maybe it's a spiral?
Oh, say more. A spiral.
So a circle is you end up at exactly where you left off, but if it's a spiral, you're trying to elevate yourself to reach some height. So maybe we're confronted with these challenges so we learn something every time.
Okay, that's a really, really nice image, right? So we're debating, is time cyclical? Does it go around again and again in a circle, an endless repetition? Or does it go somewhere? And Shira says, it's a spiral. It circles, but it is headed somewhere, right? The spiral there's a repetition, but maybe somehow this time we're supposed to learn something, to see something differently so that it moves us one step forward in the spiral, one step forward in the spiral. Yeah, Rabbi Zaki. Good. So Rabbi Zaki builds on Shira's comments and says, there then is an opportunity here for us. If things are going to cycle again, and we know this, and we've been here before, then we have an opportunity in this moment. Though this moment is precarious, because if somehow it feels like if we misstep, it's like there's bad luck about. The things could fall, an anvil could fall from a building, right? Nevertheless, we have this opportunity now that we know what's coming to confront this moment differently. To think about, okay, time is repeating, but I'm different. I've changed. What do I learn? And that, I think, forces the question, how do we get out of this? Right? Because time is cyclical, and hopefully it's spiraling, but that means that we're going forward, and hopefully we break the cycle eventually, right? Can't mean that we're just trapped forever in this Bein HaMetzarim, in this narrow place. So what do we do? How do we get out of this place? Well, so the only piece of advice we have here is we are mimatim b'simcha. We reduce our joy. And that is what Rabbi Zaki is suggesting. We have a reaction to this time. Because we know what's coming, we change our patterns of behavior. We try to figure out how to respond. So we have all of these classic practices. When the 3 weeks begin, we stop. One of the practices, many of us stop cutting our hair. That's why I look like a ragged mess today, right? Or we stop going to weddings or concerts, big celebrations. As the 3 weeks progress, there are increasing strictures, ways of responding to the tragedy of this moment, or at least of the memory of this moment. So we stop doing laundry or swimming or eating meat. And then finally on the 9th of Av, it's a full mourning day, just like our other mourning days. We fast and we don't bathe and we don't use perfumes, and it's a full mourning day. Okay, so that's good. That's a response. That allows us to remember what happened. But does it allow us to get out of it? How do we get out of this cycle? How do we break the cycle? So I want to just suggest one intriguing answer that comes from a Hasidic reading of this text, a famous Hasidic reading of this text, of just the phrase actually that we looked at, Misha nichnas Av mimatim b'simcha. One who enters the month of Av diminishes in joy, that phrase we started with. So the Hasidic reading, sort of Hasidic movement is the kind of 18th century mystical movement, and they had a particular style of reading, a particular style of interpreting. And those of you who know that Hasidic style will know that it's kind of classic for them to say, what does it mean one who enters into the month of Av diminishes in joy, mimatin b'simcha? Well, you would think it means we reduce joy. We're not as joyous as we were. We're sad during this month. But the Hasidim read it, one who enters into the month of Av, mimatin, diminishes, b'simcha, joyously. Joyously we diminish. Through joy, through happiness, through celebration, we get small. I'm not sure exactly how to read it. I went looking for the original source, and I found it in this is the oldest book I found it in, the Maor V'Shemesh, but even he says, Shamati Perush Echad, I heard this interpretation. You feel like it goes back to the Baal Shem Tov. You don't know where it starts, but it is a classic reading across Hasidic literature that one who enters into the month of Av, mimatin, gets small, gets diminished joyously. Joyously. So what does that mean? That means that there is, suggests the Hasidic tradition, a kind of joy in the diminishing of self. A joy that comes from being quiet, from letting go, from taking up less space. There's something joyous about that, about getting small. Because what got us into this mess in the first place? What are the reasons that we keep cycling through this? Well, the reasons that the rabbis give, they never blame the other side. It's our hatred and our pride and our lust and our violence and our anger and our ego that got us into this. And so maybe the thing that will get us out is a kind of letting go of self, letting go of ego. I'll just close with one story, which is that I have a funny relationship with my landlord, and he sends me all kinds of weird clips and GIFs and emojis, and he sent me this week he sent me this video of it's like 2-minute video, and all he said was hysteria, and it's a poor little girl that is somehow got trapped in a stairway on the railing. She put her head through 2 of the bars in the railing, and these are like in a subway station, like really hard bars, metal, and the video starts with her head is like sort of just trapped in there. She like stuck her head through, and now she can't pull it out, and her mother is there, and they're trying to, and a crowd of righteous people has assembled. We got to get this girl out of it. But the bars are like strong, they're tight, strong, but you see them like trying to wedge in some kind of stick and open this, and she starts crying, and it's just this little girl, this poor little girl. And nobody knows what to do. She's stuck in that. She's okay, but she's trapped. And then someone goes, wait. and they're like, tilt her over and pull her out the body side. Everybody was trying to pull her out, her head back out. But her head is the biggest part of her body. Body's so small, this poor little girl, that they tilted her over and she slided right out. And everybody went on their way. So how do you get out? How do you get out from between a narrow space? You make yourself small. You make yourself small. And there's a freedom in that. There's a freedom in the diminishing of self. So I bless us with a month of joyous diminishing, and I bless us with a safe passage, and I bless us with a year of freedom, a year that brings us in this spiraling journey through history one step closer to that final redemption. Thanks for studying with me this morning.
Amen.